With us now to talk a little bit about how it all works is Dr. Barbara-Fruth, a biologist at the Max-Planck-Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology here in Leipzig. Thanks for joining us. First, let's start with a personal question. What is it about your field that you found so interesting that you wanted to spend your life studying it?
When I started to study bonobos, they were not yet known from the wild. There was a lot of data from captivity, and this was the sexy ape who solved all conflicts by sex, and we thought, well, that's really strange. They have the same habitat almost than chimpanzees have, at least in the western part of Africa. So we started in the wild to have a closer look on that species and to compare it with chimpanzees as well.
Well, exactly. What are some of the differences that have evolved between bonobos and chimpanzees over the past few million years?
Well, the most striking for us is that they are female-dominated, or at least egalitarian. So female is the hunter in that society. They share meat, they divide food. This is one of the most striking differences. They are not that fierce in many respects. They have, in anatomical respects, a lot of differences. They are more slender and a bit more right up, have a little less white. But all the other things, like sexual dimorphism, also are really similar between both species. So the behavior is the interesting difference.
How have DNA sequencing and other new technologies revolutionized evolutionary studies?
Well, when Darwin did his studies, he only knew phenotype. So he knew that a body would have a certain shape, and nature would select upon the phenotype. And when we got to know that everything is triggered by DNA, this was the unit that became interesting in terms of the evolutionary process. Of course, we know that that's not the entire truth. There is more to that than only genes.
All right, and there'll be more to our talk in just a minute. But first, it's off to Malawi, another country becoming ever more popular for researchers. The award-winning German anthropologist Friedemann Schrenk has spent a considerable amount of time there. He's trying to find out how human beings got to be where we are today.
My name is Friedemann Schrenk. I'm a paleontologist, and I'm primarily interested in early hominids. I work here in a famous dinosaur museum, Senckenberg, but I also spend a lot of time in Africa, where I work on digs, looking for the origin of our species. Here I'm driving through Africa, in Malawi to be exact. It's a beautiful country, very green. This is our dig, where we've been working for several years at a site called Malema. Prehistoric hominids lived here. The remains are about 2.5 million years old. We are basically documenting the origin of humankind. No paleoanthropologist has ever had all the originals lined up on a single table. They're all locked up in safes. Africa was the cradle of humanity. We know that early hominids lived there and that modern humans arose there. But this is proof that our own genus, the Homo genus, first lived there 2.5 million years ago. This is the oldest piece of evidence there is. The fossils are very valuable, and we want to digitize them. That is, we want digital images of them that we can work with on a computer. Then we can measure the fossils without having to touch them. Using modern methods, we can also compare different fossils or reconstruct them. That's much easier to do on a computer. It's not only research that's important to us. We also want to share our results, especially with the children of Africa, with school classes. When you say to people in Europe that Africa is the cradle of humanity, you sometimes get strange looks. If you say it in Africa, the looks you get are even stranger. The notion of Africa as the cradle of humankind is hardly known in Africa, but it's very important to communicate that, both for their worldview and for feelings of identity there.
Dass das vermittelt wird.
Climate change played a key role in human development, especially 2.5 million years ago in Africa, when the continent dried up dramatically. Food had tough fiber or was covered by hard shells, and solutions had to be found to cope with that. That's when culture began, with the development of tools. That's the beginning of the genus Homo, to which we also belong.
Das ist der Beginn der Gattung Mensch, zu der wir auch gehören.
You can't separate human beings and technology. For me, flying is actually an aspect of evolution. I fly a lot in Africa, more than I do in Germany. This geological area, the Odenwald-Abbruch, is a lot like Africa, but there's no Autobahn running through it.
Barbara-Fruth, environmental change is the key to evolution. So if you have an environment that's stagnant, does that mean that evolution does not occur or that it only occurs very slowly?
Well, as the name says, evolution means something evolves, it develops, and the contrary is, the opposite is stagnation, so it would mean it's going to death, it will die. So evolution is the thing we need in order to develop.
Now, we're facing a unique situation at the moment where we're dealing with a changing climate, and these changes have been caused by one particular species, namely humankind. How are those changes affecting other species?
Well, climatic change is a catastrophe for all living creatures on this planet. Bonobos are lucky enough to live in the largest remaining rainforest habitat of Africa, so they not yet experience the problem. But all chimpanzees, particularly those in Western Africa, have big problems with it because the draft goes further down south and they are almost close to extinction now.
Evolutionary studies can be kind of like solving a jigsaw puzzle. There are all sorts of different pieces that have to be fitted together. Do you think that with the technological developments we've seen in the past years that it's becoming as a whole a more exact science?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it started out with the genetics that help us a lot in discovering evolutionary processes, but there are a lot of other modern technologies that help us to fit the pieces of the puzzle together.
Now, do you think that as a species, human beings have reached the high point now, or is there more to be expected in the future?
I'm sure humanity will evolve. The question is, where will we go? And I think it is very important that we all take up responsibility for how we evolve, because now it's cultural evolution that counts, and how we deal with our environment is the important question for the future.
In almost every scientific field, from physics to chemistry, we have seen major theories come and then go again. Do you think that Darwin's theories will be able to stand the test of time?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, we are happy with it since 150 years, and I'm sure it will accompany us in the future as well.
All right, Barbara-Fruth, thank you very much for joining us on Tomorrow Today.
You're welcome.